Hello everyone! So I think a lot of us were pretty shell-shocked yesterday when we learned that TESL will be no more from the 30th of January 2025 when the servers are turned off. I am planning on doing a video separate to this one, talking in more detail about my thoughts going forward. To be honest, I'm pretty cut up about it. The game has helped me through some very difficult times in life, and I just want to gather my thoughts a bit more before I comment on that. But one thing that struck me really, apart from obviously the loss of the community, which is very, which is on the whole very positive, was the fact that this beautiful card art will be completely and utterly lost once the servers are switched off. I mean, I know there's copies online somewhere, but I thought it'd be nice to actually do show premiums on screen and record them all. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting a new series where I will basically, I'm going through my collection, and it's quite time consuming, but I'm going through my collection and converting as much as I can over into premiums, and I'll still show the standard art as well, because sometimes the art looks nicer to me on the standard than on the premium. Sometimes the motion can actually distract from the art itself, but I'm aiming to, before the 90-day period is up, to try and get on screen as much of the art as I can. I'm starting with commons because I thought they're some of the cheapest ones to get in premium, and I'll kind of work through from there. And I've picked agility to start with because I think agility has some of my favourite cards in. Now, I won't have the time, obviously I've worked out I've got to do at least quite a lot of cards per day in order to get this done in time. Plus there's, on top of that, there's the whole conversion to premium mechanic. Basically, if I shop in all my excess cards, it will be over the limit and I'll lose out on gems, so I'm not having to do it manually, I'm afraid. So I'm going to try and work through. I won't be giving comments on every piece of art, just the ones that I think are particularly gorgeous, but I'm going to show every card on screen by just clicking on it and then clicking off, and that way the art is there to enjoy. So we'll start with the back alley footpad. It's quite a nice mood dynamics, this one, isn't there? I mean, I've never really played this card myself, but it is, I suppose for 0 cost, it's quite handy to give a creature cover. Now let's look at the premium. So there's a fair amount of movement in here. I quite like the way that the light is sort of glowing ambient there. You've got the blade and the glinting on the armour, but I particularly like this detail here. Curse, obviously used a lot in Goblin decks, and very heavily used card. I can see the renditions, it's meant to be like blood. I quite like the movement in this card. Dead Drop, it's not a card I particularly play. I haven't heavily featured the slay mechanic in my decks to date. I've got a long list of decks I want to play before the game ends. I'm probably unlikely to play this card though. I'd like to, depending on how things go, I'd like to try and play. I've got some silly decks lined up I'd like to play. I'm also happy to take viewer requests of decks they want me to play, and we'll just see how it goes from here. And that's quite nice detail there, isn't it? But I just wanted to make certain all this art wasn't lost forever. I mean, it's quite nice to have the beautiful sort of premium effects, isn't it? Dress Spy. I'm going to be a bit girly-whirly here and say I quite like her outfit. Used a lot in market decks. That one's quite atmospheric, isn't it? Quite like the way the movement on her hair there, and I always like with the a lot of the agility cards, you've got that glinting of on their weaponry as well. Moves and Shadows, obviously a very heavily featured card for movement decks. Not a huge amount to say about that really. Well, I'm a sucker for a flame effect, as you can see. That's really something, isn't it? That's lovely. My favourite cards, I think, in terms of the visuals, I'm not an art critic at all. I'm just giving my own subjective opinion. You might have your favourites as well, and I'd be happy to. In fact, I'd be fascinated to hear your comments below the video, actually. But I like cards which have a flame effect, and also the ones that have snow and ice effects as well. Goblin, fairly basic card. Nice interplay of light there. Paralysed isn't often played, it's normally only played if there's a random sort of action generated from something using the plot mechanic. That's quite nice, it's a little bit hypnotic, isn't it? It's not a card that's commonly played. Similar for arrow in the knee. That looks a bit painful, doesn't it? Nice detail on the weapon there, on the arrow. And the smoke in the background. I've got a soft spot for Khajiits, and while Bandari Opportunist isn't one of my favourite cards, it is a very useful one to get a little bit of draw, but it quite often gets targeted by Piercing Twilight. So there's a bit of movement here. You've got the sunlight there and the rippling effect here. It's a bit more of a subtle theme in this one. Bewildering Speed. Got the spirit sort of overtaking the guy. I presume he's running away from it. Quite a nice, pretty effect there, isn't it? Brotherhood Sanctuary, again, I've not really played a proper sleigh deck. I've played elements of sleigh sometimes. Maybe I ought to play a sleigh deck before the game finishes. I'll see, I might try and put my own stint on it. That one's a bit creepy, isn't it? And that's the alt art version of it, which I think's to begin with I thought the other one was more striking, but this has grown on me. I do like the movement of the light there. Brotherhood Suspect, not often played. I do like Arganians, but I'm not particularly a fan of the art here. That's okay, the premium version, but again, I'm not a great fan of the art on that one. But I don't want to leave any cards out, even the ones that I'm not especially keen on. There might be ones that you guys enjoy looking at. Deepwood Trapper, I like using her in Aggro Empire when you're combining with Oathman, and you need to have like yellow and green on the board. Nice sort of rain effect there. I do like Dominion Oathman. Quite a nice outfit she's got on there, but I like the sound she makes when you've got blue on the board and she then whacks the opponent in the face for 2 damage. It just makes me giggle. So again, there's more light detail in the background rather than it's a more subtle card in terms of the premium art. Not a huge amount to say about this one. I don't really often run shout decks, but other people might have fonder memories of it. I do like the sort of mauve, purple with hints of blue effect on that. Drain Vitality, that's just the alt art version. Some of these I only have, some of them I'll have 3 of, some I'll have 1 or 2 of, depending on what gauntlet it was. Some gauntlets I just couldn't be bothered to do or didn't have the time to do all 3 runs. Quite often it's I didn't have the time to, but occasionally you'll get, well I find anyway, Demoralising Gauntlet where you just have hardly any wins and you just think, nope, I'm not repeating the experience another 2 times. Obviously very often played in Goblins, a nice cheap starter. I like the sort of sparks that are coming off the flame there. And the light flickering. That's actually quite a good one. He used to go to the dentist though, doesn't he? This is one of those cars where I actually think the main art is nicer than the premium. I just think it's more defined, the grooves on there. Now this is one of my favourites, Imbued Bosna. I really like playing Imbued Bosna. In fact, I did, even before TESL wasn't announced to be closing, I did actually craft her in premium because I really like pairing her in. Well, I'm very fond of the consumer mechanic anyway, but I like pairing her with Alfiq and also with what's the shackle lady? We'll come to her later. The 4-3 who shackles and gets basically she buffs anything that consumes her, so it's very useful. And also, if you run it with the blue mage who does damage based upon the creature's health, and it gets lethal, so it's automatic damage. You can take out some big creatures with her. Again, I like the sort of green fire effect. Not a huge amount to say about this one. But I did yesterday, on day 1 of the November 22 ladder, I did come across a Telvanni who actually used this as ramp, and they made certain they sacrificed it with Fire Bloom in order to get extra ramp, and they did ramp quite well. Still beat them, but it was quite clever. I appreciated them being a bit more inventive. I like Moratong Aspirant. I like her outfit. It can be a pain if it goes off and your opponent manages to generate loads of them on the board, but I do like the card. I like the art, like the axe, like her outfit. And that's lovely, isn't it? You've got the light, you've got the movement of the vegetation, you've got the gleam of the weapons and her hair moving. Just lovely. Mournhold, well, there's not a lot to say about this card. People don't tend to play it unless it's generated as a result of killing somebody's traitor, and then it generates a card for your opponent. But the light on the premium version, and particularly the way it ripples down the armour and the shield, it's very attractive, isn't it? And the way the hair is moving in the breeze as well. As I said, I'm quite fond of Khajiits. I do use this one, I think, in my it's my Khajiit Telvanni, known as Here Kitty Kitty. So I do use this one a lot, but I think that's, again, a fairly subtle premium. They probably could have done a bit more of it. Another Khajiit. Okay, I quite like the purple effect on there, but it's not my favourite art. A much loved and much used card in TESL. There's a bit of a TESL superstition that if you play Ungulum in the field lane, then within about a round or two you'll get the you'll start getting your Brotherhood assassins. Whereas if you play him in the shadow lane, you don't tend to get them as fast. No actual proof of this, although I have to admit from my own experience it does tend to be the case, so I always tend to play him in the field lane. Maybe I've just had a good track record of that. I'm pretty fond of Spriggans. I quite often used to feature them in like animal Spriggan decks. And your opponent is never keen to see drain on the board, are they? So, from that perspective, this is a nice cheap option to have early drain. I like the sort of green sort of colour and the way that the light interplays on this card. A much used card. I mean, I use it, but I find a bit creepy their eyes and that. But much used card, very popular. Again, I'm not a great fan of the art here, but I do appreciate the card and its utility in games. Barter. I hardly ever played on ladder, but I've played it a lot in friendlies. Particularly when I used to play Transmogrify with Ruxin. That's quite a nice premium, isn't it? I like the interplay of the light on the items on the table, that's really nice. So here's an alt barter. Got that one from a gauntlet. I actually think I prefer the premium of the standard version for that. Bloody Hand is used a lot obviously in Goblin decks. But I think I prefer the premium. Just look at that flame effect. That really warms a pyromaniac's heart, and I do love that flame effect. Caravan Enforcer, I know people who don't like move decks probably hate this card, but I actually do like the card particularly. Well, I'm fond of Khajiits, aren't I? But the premium is just so much better. It's got that beautiful snow effect. It's just luxuriating looking at that for a few moments. Isn't it beautiful? Just the way the light... I've never noticed before how the light is sweeping behind the snow as well. Really quite something. Cog Collector I've used occasionally in Khajiit decks. It always gets killed or blocked pretty early on, and it always seems to give rubbish, but I quite like the card. Now, Crazed Hunger. I quite like the effect on the premium. I think what I used to find mildly annoying about this card is whenever I play Transmogrify, if I got like a random effect card to generate in order to get a token or something to then use to Transmogrify, I used to get this card a lot, and yet when I'd be playing against Ruxin, he'd always get something really good and I'd always get that. It was just so annoying. Daring Cut Purse. I like Khajiits, obviously. I do think the premium's so much better though. And this is why, look at that beautiful effect going on there. It's just gorgeous, isn't it? Don't often see Deranged Corpus on ladder. Occasionally it gets used. Quite a nice premium there. But I think what really goes against it is the 0-1. People don't tend to play it because it's just going to get executed. Well, it's going to get executed when it's on your opponent's turn. Much used card. Obviously, I'm very, very fond of Khajiits. If you've never played before, well, I'll say this in the hope that some of you get to experiment a bit more before TESL closes. But if you've never played Khajiit Telvanni, it's actually pretty strong, so I'd recommend it. If you like Telvanni, you just want to try something a bit different, build yourself a Khajiit Telvanni. Great fun. Just look at that flame effect on that torch. Then you've got the smoke in the background and the glint on the blade. It's just beautiful, isn't it? I've only ever used this card in Arena. Sometimes solo Arena, sometimes in Versus Arena. I obviously crafted a premium copy for this video. That's actually really elevates the card, doesn't it? It looks beautiful with that purple smoke around it. Embassy Disguise, fairly standard card, not a huge amount to be interested in art-wise from my perspective. Maybe you feel differently. He actually looks a bit creepy there, doesn't he, with his eyes? Let's see how I can do this. So we've got Feldew. It's quite nice art there, isn't it? And then of course the Electronoble. That's just gorgeous. Less enamoured with that version, but I do really like that. I'm just trying to keep my cursor on the side so you can really appreciate the beauty of that, but the thing is when I take my cursor off the card it'll just disappear. This is an old faithful friend. Pretty much an auto-include in every deck running agility. Like the smoke behind him there. I know some people prefer this art to the alt art, but I actually do prefer the alt art one. I like the light behind him. I think his armour's very nice. He's a very fetching, good-looking, handsome Argonian, isn't he? That detail there particularly is lovely, isn't it? The light behind him. Obviously that's going to be my favourite version because the fire effect is beautiful, isn't it? The glint on the blade as well, and the armour, but mainly for the fire effect. Alt art version. I only got 2 of that because I think the gauntlet, I forget which gauntlet it was, but it was a gauntlet I didn't particularly enjoy, so I think I couldn't bear to drag myself out doing any more. Gloomlurker. I'm very fond of Falmer. There's a couple of videos on my channel where I played different variations of Falmer. I think it was Falmer move deck. I really like Falmer, and I wish there'd been more of them in the game. I'm particularly fond of Gloomlurker. Look at that beautiful purple light behind the blade, and again the use of light there, and just the fluidity of the art really appeals. Grand Ball, I mean that's okay for art, but I think the premium is nicer because you've got the light playing off and the people stand out a little bit more. Again, it sometimes gets used in move decks. I remember one of my friends who's a move player a lot, it's one of his cards he likes to include. This poor Argonian doesn't get much love, does he? I have played him, I think, in one of my Outcast decks. I actually think the art on it's quite nice. Here's another one of my favourites. I like this veteran. It's a good early aggression card. And it just makes me giggle because his accent, and he goes, "He's in need of a thrashing." And I just can't help chanting it along with him when he's playing, when I'm playing him. Wish I could do really good impersonations of all the voices and sounds in the cards, but I'm not great with impersonations, I'm afraid. So that's just my version of it. When I remember a card, it has a particularly memorable line, I'll try and say it. It might not be able to get the intonation the same way because I'm not a voice actor, obviously, but I'll just try and put it in there just so people can enjoy that. Never played this card, but I do think the premium's very beautiful. Oh no, hang on, I have played it. I've played it. Have I played it in Arena versus Arena? I think. Well, that's beautiful. It's like electricity, isn't it? Leafwater Blessing. This card's become a lot more popular on ladder recently. I played somebody this morning with a Leafwater Blessing deck on my way to rank 4 on, what's it today? It's day 2 of the November season, so I was pleased to make rank 4 that quickly. But I think it was Rumping Rufus who has popularised this card. Well, people who've been in the game for longer than me would know who has or hasn't made things popular, but certainly in recent months I think it's been Rufus who's made this card popular, featured it in a deck on one of his videos on his channel. That's quite attractive old sort of premium, isn't it? I like the glow there and the movement. Lockpick tends to be used in market archer decks or just archer, market decks generally, because sometimes you get a market assassin as well. For that reason it's not one of my favourites, but sometimes people do use it to cycle through their deck. But that's quite a nice premium, isn't it? Mad Dash. Again, very popular in movement decks. Do like these sort of green effect there and the movement on the clothes, but it's not my favourite art from this from the movement cards. No, I do quite like this Moratong assassin. He always gets killed before you can actually get his effect off, or 99% of the time he does. But I like it when he goes, well, what's he say? Just doing business. And then he of course buffs. He's great fun. Never noticed the scary glowing eyes though before, but now that's a bit scary actually, look at that up close. Traitor, one of the most used cards in aggressive, particularly burn decks. Some people, I had somebody once say to me they didn't think he was had a place in an aggressive deck because when he gets killed he generates a guard, but it's a very weak guard, so I kind of feel that you can kill that guard quite easily. It's a 2-1. Not the greatest art, I have to say, but very useful card. Again, a staple of Goblin decks. Really nice effect going on here. I'm just trying to keep my cursor away from the actual card. I mean, some of you might want to screen grab your favourites or something. This goat is very naughty, isn't it? I've run animal decks. I've been there, one of my favourites, animal decks. I do run them. I had for several years I used to run an aggressive animal Eben build. I remember that it actually got me up 2 ranks in one. I think it was on 2 ranks in one day, in one evening I think. But the goat tends to whiff. You can have it in animal deck and you might have maybe a couple of zookeepers and that goat always whiffs. I think because sometimes the definition of animal and beast, it depends on what the creature is. Sometimes it's not covered by the goat description, but it tends to whiff more than it draws. Often there's no premium available for that. very rarely see this. In fact, I've not played Treasure Hunt at all in my time on TESL, so I probably will add that to my list of things to... Let me just grab my pen. I need to play a Treasure Hunt deck. Well, I've never done it. Nothing particularly special about that. But I have seen people put this card to great use on ladder. Occasionally, it tends to be a bit more unusual in Treasure Hunt decks, but I have seen people do it. Still not my favourite art for out of the Khajiits, but I think that's quite a decent premium. Now this is actually quite cute. You might think, what a rubbish guard. But it makes such a sad, cute little sound when it gets killed or injured. It's just so cute. And I was playing somebody last season, and I just felt really bad when I killed their... actually, it's Silt Strider, not Stilt Strider. I always want to call it Stilt, but it's Silt Strider. I felt so guilty when I killed it because it was in my way to winning the match, and it made such a sad little sound. So I kind of feel a bit affectionate towards this card, even though it's not the most useful. I've never played Underboss actually. Maybe I ought to give it a go. Now, I do think that the face of the Khajiit is a bit clearer in the standard version, but I do like that effect coming out of here. Ah, one of my favourites, Slinking Jackal. Such a cute card and such a good card for early aggression. And it makes such a cute little growl, doesn't it, when it attacks the opponent, so unfortunately I can't replicate the growl, but it's probably in a lot of my videos since I play Jackal a lot. Again, a very popular card, very useful if you get the last gasp effect off. I do think the premium is particularly lovely with that effect in the background, and it's like, I think it's like rain and also a bit of smoke and the glinting on the armour. Now this card is one of the banes of my life. The number of times I've actually been about to kill an opponent and they've put a snake tooth necklace. I always want to call it snaggletooth necklace, but it's a snake tooth necklace. And they chuck it on a big creature like Nargaleaf or an Alien Guardian or something. It's really annoying. But it's a beautiful effect, isn't it, on the sort of premium copy. Pawnbroker. Quite like the art on this one. That's quite atmospheric, isn't it? But she's a bit of a hit and miss as to whether you get anything decent off her. I mean, the number of times she's given me Dive Rock Fall would have been really annoying. But when she does give you something decent, like whether it's a curse or an unsummon or something, that's useful. But most of the time she gives something rubbish. But I still quite like the card. Bootlegger, I actually do use. Obviously, I think I use him in my Here Kitty Kitty Khajiit Telvanni, but he's also very useful. You just want to get past a guard, so you don't necessarily have to have a pilfer effect. You just want to get past a guard. Quite a cheap way of doing it as well. I think I prefer the standard version on this one because that effect does kind of. It's only sort of momentarily obscures his face, but it's still quite... It's nice, but I just prefer the standard one. I don't know many people who play this one. I'm not a great fan of the art personally, but I'm just showing it here in case anyone does particularly like it. As I said, even if I'm not a fan of a particular card, I'm going to still show it anyway because the art on the whole in TESL is just really beautiful. And I just want to keep it immortalised somewhere on the internet. And I know there are like sites which will have like static pictures of the cards, but I just want to have the beautiful of the premiums captured as well. auto include in any agility decks, really. And well, you know I'm fond of Argonians and Khajiits. They're probably my favourite creatures in TESL. Quite atmospheric. I do really like this version of it as well. Wild Boar. Great fun card to run in an animal deck, and it can spiral out of control really quickly. I don't think... no, oh there is. This one does actually have... I know the goat doesn't have a premium version, but this does. That's quite lovely, isn't it, with the light through the trees? Great early drain option, which no opponent's going to be happy to see. I played Dungeons and Dragons, and Will-o'-the-Wisps are quite dangerous in those, so while I like it in TESL, I'm less keen on it when I play Dungeons and Dragons, when you come across one. But I always think of, whenever I'm playing D&D, I always think of this card when a Will-o'-the-Wisp turns up. Now that is really something. I love the effect on that. Both the sky and just the light of the Will-o'-the-Wisp. You can hypnotise yourself with that, probably. I've used her again, mainly in Arena. She's not often played, but that's quite a nice effect, isn't it? I've never played Swindler. Not a great fan of the art there. But at least the colour of the jewellery and the items that they're holding, that's quite a nice effect. But not one I've ever played. Like the colour scheme on this one, but the creature, I kind of feel a bit sorry for it having that sticking out of its face, really. Still not a great fan of that art, but the colour scheme on it's nice. Astrid, I do think the standard version, her outfit looks a lot... I mean, I like her outfit anyway. Her outfit looks a lot clearer on that. But I did get her in premium because I like the card. And I think the red flame effect does kind of... I suppose it's meant to donate the whole assassin thing, but it does detract a little bit from the detail on the card. But I do like the premium. I just prefer the standard version. A nice early aggression card. As I said, I'm very fond of Khajiits. I think they could have done a little bit more with this one though. It's one of the more subtle premiums. Goblins are popular creatures on ladder, mainly I think because I know some people hate them. I like the sounds the goblins make. It's a bit of a disappointment to me that I cannot replicate them. What does this one do? Does it do a yeah type sound I think it makes, but that's a really rubbish impersonation of it. But quite a nice effect on that premium. Now, a very useful prophecy card I used to play a lot when I was a newbie. But I just prefer the alt art version. Not hard to see why when you... So again, that's okay with the movement and the colours and everything, but there's just so much more going on visually here with the movement in the background, with the hair moving. Looking in behind him. And just the art has got more fluidity. Very popular card in particularly Burn Assassin decks. Very useful card. I do like the card, but I just don't really like the sound it makes, which I'm not even going to try to. Again, I think the movement's nice on the premium, but it does kind of obscure the face a bit, doesn't it? If you go back and look here, you can see the face a bit better there. Slayer, very popular card for a bit of early threat. Not a massive fan of the art though. I suppose it's fairly dark because of the environment, but it's not one of my favourites, but it's a very useful card. Now this is who I consider, whenever I used to joke quite often about the game having developed an AI type sentience, and this is how I perceive TESL personified. Corner Club Gambler. I have a bit of a... Given that TESL for the past 4 years has given me a lot of high hands, I can play decks that other people have given me who are top players, and they are perfectly... they get perfect draw with them quite regularly. Obviously every deck has its time where it goes off the boil, but... And then I'd play the deck and it would come out back to front, so I'd get all the high hand stuff first and all the lower stuff late game when it's less useful. So I kind of look on Corner Club as being like the personification of TESL. I see her as being the game. If it was a person in TESL, it would be this card, because she's very fickle what she can give you and what she brings to you as well. I personally prefer the Pilfer Khajiit, which deck thins to this, because it can also, it's got better health, so it's a 3/4, 3 attack, 4 health, and it can trade with other creatures as well as Pilfer to thin out your deck. So I personally prefer the Khajiit, but she's a very popular card, and I'd say this is TESL personified, this lady. I do like Serial. I remember the story sort of exercise, and it was quite difficult to for me to get the... I think it's a story which involves having to replicate a tune and kill these certain creatures within a set order based upon the sound of the tune. It was quite difficult. And I've crafted the premium just for this video. Well, a lot of the premiums here I've crafted for this video. But yeah, a nice flame effect there, isn't it? I consider this card unplayable. I'm not a great fan of the art either. If anyone's ever managed to pull off playing this card, then do let me know. I'd be interested to know, did you get value out of it? This one, I really like her outfit. You can see the detail on the standard card. Being lethal is obviously subject to execute, but I do like the both the colour and the mood of the background. And of course I played this card in my Fashion Police deck that I did a while back, which was great fun, where I just made a deck and took it on ladder based on whose outfits I liked the most. Very atmospheric. I do love that card. Another staple for a lot of people. Obviously I'm very fond of Khajiit, but this, I think this, in terms of some of the cheaper cards, I think this is a strong contender for one of the most beautiful ones. Just look at that. The sky in the background and the beautiful flame effect. This is one of my... When I started... I mean, I haven't consistently gone towards premiums. I've only really started crafting them a lot more because TESL was closing, and I wanted to immortalise the art. But this is one of the first ones when I started looking at premiums a few months ago. This is one of the first ones I went for because it is so beautiful and it's a pleasure. Every time I see it, it's a pleasure. Probably not a pleasure for my opponents, but just stunning. That sky. I think if I don't click off it soon, I'm going to be hypnotised. So I better do that, but it's with great reluctance I have to move on. This is one of my early favourites. In one of my early Eben decks, because Eben's my favourite class. I used to run him, and I used to try and make it so that he was the one giving the killing blow, because he says It's been fun, but this is where our little game ends, and it was just such a good closing line.